Daniel chapter 1 verse 8 says, "But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way." The context of this verse is where the children of Israel have been taken into captivity by King Nebuchadnezzar, and they have been taken into the king's palace, and the king selects a very special group of young people, young men, who are to be trained in the ways of the Babylonians. And they are brought into the king's palace. They are offered the best food that is available, that the king himself eats, and they are offered that opportunity to sit at the king's table and to eat with the king. There is nothing greater than that. And so when Daniel is offered this food together with his friends who have been taken from Israel, they recognize that eating this food would be something that would defile them, because the food that was being offered here had already been offered to idols. And so they realize that if they eat this food that has been offered to idol, it's like allowing Jehovah, the God of Israel, to bow to the God of the Babylonians. And so because of their faith and because of their conviction, they decide they are not going to partake of this food. How have we defiled ourselves as Kenyans? Kenyans in general, just like other human beings across the world, we are in a context almost similar to the one that Daniel and his Jewish friends found themselves in. Particularly for those of us who are believers, those of us who are Christians, we find ourselves in a situation where the world, if we take the world now as Babylon, is offering us so many things that sometimes are contrary to our morals, contrary to our culture, contrary to our faith, contrary to the things that we believe are right. And so we are faced with that situation where we have to make a choice whether we'll go with the standards that we have known from times past or go with that which is being offered to us today. And so the very challenge that faced Daniel and his other colleagues from Israel is what is facing us today. So when I talk generally about Kenyans, without coming first to the Christians, is that the choice that we have today is whether we will follow our values as society or follow the values of the world, most of it which is imported, most of it which is brought to us from an external world that really has been destroyed. And so we find ourselves in a situation where these things look very good, just like the food at the king's palace was definitely great. It was a privilege to sit with the king. And sometimes it looks like it is more advanced, more civilized, you look more modern when you engage in some of the things that are happening. Right now, there has been a big debate on the issues of abortion, homosexuality. We have to deal with issues of dressing and how we conduct ourselves in the public space. All these things are coming upon us, and sometimes it looks like it is more modern, more advanced when we engage in some of them, and you look backwards, you look like you have been left out if you follow the ordinary standards of our Kenyan values. When it comes to Christians, it gets even worse, because the Bible has very clear standards on how a Christian should live his life. Very clear standards on how we should conduct ourselves in the public space, how we should conduct ourselves in the private space. But the pressure that is upon us is that everybody is doing it. And so because everybody is doing it, we also feel the pressure to do the same. And so I find, especially for young people, I'm glad that I'm not a young person in this generation, because the pressure to conform is just too high. What the internet is bringing upon us in every social media space You could be doing your work on a computer. You did not intend to look at anything, and the things just fall on your plate, as it were. And the choice is, do I eat or don't I eat? Do I partake or don't I partake? And this is a choice that is facing each and every person, and we have to make a choice, just like Daniel did, not to defile ourselves, not to defile our souls, not to defile our lives. How can we remain undefiled in this generation? A very good question. As I've said, it is a very difficult thing to remain undefiled in this generation. The human person has 5 senses: the sense of touch, the sense of smell, the sense of sight, the sense of sound, and which is the 5th one, the sense of hearing. These 5 senses are your point of either remaining pure or being defiled. You are defiled by what you see. And if you do not make a choice, like Lot said, not Lot, but Job said, that I have made a covenant with my eyes that I will not look at a woman. That is just one of them. It's not only women that we look at. But what do you look at? What do you watch? What kind of movies do you watch? What kind of programs do you watch? What kind of things do you watch? Just the eyes. So if you want to remain pure, make a covenant with your eyes. The things that you watch, the things that you look at. Number 2, what you touch. The things that you touch will have an impact on your life as a person. And the things that you hear, the kind of music you listen to, all these things, those are the entry points, as it were. They are the 5 doors that through which defilement will come into your system. So if you are to remain pure, check your 5 senses: your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, your sense of sight, and your sense of hearing. All these senses have to be monitored so that you are only following the things that bring edification to your life. Paul talks to the Philippians in the Philippians chapter 4 verse 8, which I think I should just read for us, because for me I find it a great standard for knowing what to do and what to do. He says this in Philippians chapter 4 verse 8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This for me is the standard. Ask yourself, is this thing pure? Is this thing clean? Is this thing praiseworthy? Is it true? Before you engage with it. That is the standard that helped Daniel and his Hebrew friends to make a decision as to what they are going to do and what they are not going to do. So if you are going to remain undefiled, use Philippians chapter 4 verse 8 as your standard for anything and everything that you are going to engage yourself in whichever space you find yourself. If you use this, you'll be okay. Number 6.
So what is the space of the church in the leadership of the country?
What is the space of the church in governance and the leadership of the country? The church is considered as the conscience of the nation, just like God has given us a conscience as human beings that tells you when something is right and when something is not right. And so the church acts as the conscience of the nation, so that your conscience will be quiet as long as you're doing the right thing. You will be okay. That's when you say, my conscience doesn't disturb me. You are okay. But the moment something happens or you're about to go somewhere, it is like an alarm bell that tells you you are going to the wrong place. that thing is not right. It is your conscience. So the church is supposed to act in that sense within the nation, that we should generally allow the governance of the nation to proceed as long as they are doing the right thing, because these are also God's servants. The leaders in government are God's servants. That's what the Bible says. They are executing God's purposes. But the moment they are going off tangent, the moment they are getting into spaces that are not right, the church must arise and speak out and point out the issues that are not right, so that we can get back the leaders back in track. So as the conscience of the nation, we cannot afford to keep quiet, because we are also the watchmen. So Ezekiel is told that if he does not speak out, it will be required of him. And so for us too, as the church, we need to be conscious of the nation. We are not supposed to engage with the politics of the nation in terms of party politics, whether supporting this person or the other person. That is not the place of the church. But we are there to say what is happening here is not right. Thus says the Lord, is our prophetic role as the church in the nation. Young people in governance have the greatest role. Read throughout scriptures. The people who made a difference in society were young people. All the way from Joseph, you come to Daniel, to Esther, Jeremiah. I mean, there are very few Isaiahs in the Bible, other than people like Abraham and others. Daniel was a young person. David was a young person. Jeremiah was a young person. Esther was a young person. Joseph was a young person. Jesus was a young person. All these people were young people. So this idea that leadership, governance, and the issues of society belong to older people is a deception that we should not buy into. And when young people do not get up and take their responsibility and their role, because you are shaping the future for yourself. If you allow it to go with the people that are already lived their lives, then you have lost it. So for me, young people really need to take great interest in society and what is going on. It is very unfortunate that young people today, some of them don't even watch news. The news time, they have the earplugs listening to whatever they are listening to, because they find it irrelevant to them, while their future is actually passing by them. When we were in the university as young people, the university was like the conscience of the nation. We would, many times I remember we would go to the streets because of something that has happened in Nigeria or in a different country somewhere, because we are not in agreement with it. Comrade power was a very powerful thing. So the young people were in touch with what is happening locally, corruption issues, injustices and human rights and all those things. It was young people that kept the government on its toes. These days, the young people are so passive. It is not biblical. So I would call upon our young people, particularly Christians, to take their space and provide leadership and be the conscience of the nation. Start from where you are. Start from where you are, because God, it's when you read the Bible, we must remember the Bible is a condensed history, very condensed, and only highlights are given. So it's sometimes when we read it, we feel like what is written as snippets was the real life. That was not the real life. These are but snippets of what was happening. And it is very rare that you find a person called out of their context. They were always called within their context. So it's very rare that God will call you from where you are and take you to a totally different context to make a difference. Very rare. It does happen. You can be called from Kenya to go and be a missionary in China, but that is very rare. Usually God wants you to make a difference right where you are, because the plan and purpose that God has for you is from before you are born. So even where you are born, the family you are born into, and the life the journey that you are walking is all part of God's plan. And so when you are sensitive to hear what God is saying, you will then realize that in that space where you are, there are things He wants you to do. And as you are faithful in doing the little that is within your context, is how He gets you to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. It is rare that God will pick you today and put you in parliament as an MP. It's very unlikely. But as you are faithful in the little around your surrounding, you may find yourself one day in parliament, in cabinet, in other places. Because he who is faithful in little, much more is given. So start where you are with what you have. Look at your own neighborhood. What are the things that you can do that can make a difference to your society? In the space, in the social media space that possibly you are in, what kind of difference can you make? There's a time, I'm not a social media person, but there's a time I entered the social media space specifically to make a difference. And I joined Twitter and Facebook. I could not cope. I could not cope. Just listening to what people are saying and bringing a biblical perspective to the discussion in that space. I tell you, the number of people who want to hear more and who want to question. Of course, you have to be ready also to be beaten in that space. It's a very rough environment. So when you come with some very, very strong points that are contrary to other people's views, you're ready to be beaten. But you make a difference. There's a time I took upon somebody who was really misleading people on Twitter. And I said, my friend, because I know the person, very respected person, I said, at your level in society, I don't expect you to engage in this kind of discussion. And I left it. I didn't even know they would respond. But they responded. And they say, oh, no. They stopped. From that day, they never said those things. Using bad language and vulgar, I said, at your level, I don't expect you to do this. There's another person, I just know the name, during the campaigns, 2007, was it 2017? Yeah. Was calling, it was 2017, President Uhuru, calling names, bad names. I'm not Uhuru's communication, but I just felt, here's a person who perhaps doesn't even know anything, but he's really talking. So I just wrote, I checked, who is this person? Because the kind of language that they were using was so bad. So I decided to check their profile. I find this as a university student. So I inboxed her and said, young girl, you are still so very young. Your future is still ahead of you. And the kind of language you are talking, and it is very clear that you are very ignorant even on the things that you are saying, you are ruining your future. Because you don't know where life is going to take you. On the side. And they changed. They changed. There was a very good example, just what I told this young girl, a very good example the other day of this lady, who was appointed into a very good space, but because of the tweets of yesteryears, she lost the opportunity. So you can do a lot even in just that space if you take it as a ministry and just say, I want to change the narrative in this space. you will be overwhelmed. I actually gave up because the number of emails, tweets, and what people who just want me to answer questions and do this, and I would answer them. I could not even eat. Are we together? So the world out there is really looking for authenticity, for truth. On the surface, they look like they don't care, but in the reality, they care a lot. I talked about homosexuality online. I put some very tweets that got me a lot of stones. But in that same group, the number of people who came and wanted to see me as a pastor to just counsel with them, I am caught up in homosexuality. Can I come and pray with me? I was amazed. So ministry is plenty. It's plenty. Start where you are with what you have.